Welcome aboard, oncoming riders. Please take your seats quickly and buckle those seatbelts. We're full point on that lap bar. Seatbelts first, lap bar second. Make sure you keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the trains at all times. Refrain from having any loose articles out during the ride as they may fall out. And as always, enjoy your ride here on Rising to the Challenge. Welcome aboard, listeners, to Rising to the Challenge. I'm your host, Evergreen, and together we will be embarking on an adventure to discover which park in Ohio and the United States has the most variety in roller coasters. In today's episode, we will be seeing who will be the victor. Will it be Kings Island of Mason, Ohio, or Cedar Point of Sandusky, Ohio? So buckle your seatbelts and pull down your lap bars because this here will be one wild ride. Our first stop will take us beneath the surface of different coaster types and their manufacturers. Almost every type of roller coaster has its own manufacturer. Well, it does seem that way at least. The most common roller coaster maker is Bolliger and Mabillard, also known as B&M. It's easier to say, so a lot of people just say B&M. They manufactured favorite roller coasters like Orion at Kings Island and Gatekeeper at Cedar Point. Another big name and well-known manufacturer is Intamin. They manufactured other favorites like Millennium Force at Cedar Point, and an honorable mention goes to King Ka at Six Flags Great Adventure. Both Orion and Millennium Force are Giga coasters, but Gatekeeper is a wing coaster. King Ka is one of only two Giga Strata coasters, the other being Top Thrill 2, which does open on May 4th of 2024. All this talk of Giga coasters and Strata coasters can make an explorer take the wrong turn. So it's a really good idea to prepare for that part of an adventure. So, without a further ado, let's dive deep. So let's get right into it. But the first thing that we need to talk about are the towering types. There are three coasters that I could consider towering: Strata, Giga, and Hybrid coasters. They all are very towering types of coasters. Usually have a almost like going up a hill, then going down. It's you don't really hesitate up at the top very much. Now, I will say this: there's gonna be a few things that you're gonna be like, "What are you talking about?" And that's gonna be drop height versus normal height or ground height. Drops can on roller coasters tend to go under the ground level, so that's where you get the drop height. I'm gonna call it the ground height, which is from the ground up. Drop height is if the drop goes below ground level. So let's just get right into these coaster types, starting with strata coasters. Strata coasters tend to are any coaster with a drop height of 400 to 499 feet. That is drop height, so it probably goes below ground level, or just mainly really a normal. These coasters are probably gonna have a drop height that is relatively close to their normal height because I don't know any. There's only two in existence. One isn't open yet, but they're both in the United States. One is in Six Flags Great Adventure in New Jersey, whereas the other one is going to open on May 4th, and which is Top Thrill 2. Next, we have Giga coasters. They are a type of coaster with a drop height of 300 to 399 feet. The newest one of this type of coaster is called Orion. Orion is in Mason, Ohio, in Area 72 of Kings Island. It is able to be classified as a Giga Coaster because it has a drop of 300 feet. There are only 7 in existence right now in the world, and 4 of which are actually in the United States. And funny fact that they're all Cedar Fair parks. If you ever hang around someone, they're probably going to refer to Kings Island, Cedar Point, Kings Dominion, and Carowinds as the Big Four. Those are the main 4 Cedar Fair parks. Sorry all the other ones, but I think those 3 could just be called the Big Four because they are the biggest names in across the board. They are the top coasters. They're mostly known for their coasters. I don't know if they're really known for much else, but I know they're probably known for their coasters. So there are 7, like I said, there are 7 Giga coasters in the world. 4 are in the United States, 2 are in Ohio. That is Orion and Millennium Force. The first and newest coaster are in Ohio. The other one we have Fury 325, which is the tallest and fastest one, as well as also I believe the longest Giga coaster that's at Carowinds. And then Intimidator 305 is at Kings Dominion in Doswell, Virginia. And lastly, we have hypercoasters. These amazingly fun coasters have a actual height, not that ground height, not that's not including the drop height, remember, of more than 200 feet, but it's less than 300, which that would also make Orion partially a hypercoaster because its real height, ground height, is 287 feet. Now, among those classifications, you'll probably encounter smaller and more common types. Like I said before, hypercoasters are the most common among the 3 I just mentioned, but my personal favorite hypercoaster is Diamondback at Kings Island. Also, seeming said that's the only one I've ever ridden. So, of course, it's my favorite, but hopefully I'll be able to ride some more this year. But like I said before, you'll encounter smaller, more common types of coasters. From anything from wing coasters to a wild mouse coaster. Those terms can still be daunting though. So let's break it down even more. Coaster types. Duck! Almost got destroyed by that wing coaster. Wing coasters are a type of coaster where riders sit beside the track instead of over it like on Orion and like every other coaster in existence. Except for the few types, which I will mention later. The most probably famous and example one is Gatekeeper, that guards over Cedar Point's gates with its blue track and gold trains. Only the bravest explorers dare to ride this coaster. Most get scared by the challenge it puts forth to deter any unruly enemies that might try to cause some havoc on Cedar Point, on the kingdom that it so gracefully guards. Moving on, we can gaze upon another cool coaster top known as a dive coaster. These coasters feature an almost vertical drop, hence its name. In close relation, we can spot a floorless coaster. These types of coasters carry riders over the track like dive coasters with just no floor beneath the trains. Your feet are going to dangle like on an inverted coaster or a wing coaster. Examples of each are Valraven and Rougarou. Valraven is a dive, whereas Rougarou is the floorless coaster. They both help guard Cedar Point with Gatekeeper. Up there, I see an inverted coaster, an inverted shuttle, and a suspended coaster. These magnificent coasters all carry riders underneath the track. Unlike wing coasters, and like every other type of coaster, an inverted coaster is easily recognizable from its relatives by simply being a normal train underneath the track. Of course, these coasters tend to go upside down, but they have to be designed with over the shoulder restraints instead of a plain old lap bar. Now, I am not saying any lap bar is plain. They range from everything from a simple bar to literally being, I don't know how to describe it, diamond shape. I don't know. Go ride Diamondback in Orion at Kings Island. You'll know what I mean. I always love the Diamondback one because I always act like it's actually a snake and that it's real because it's fun. I'm also personally an author, so this could be why I do it. Now, inverted shuttle coasters, moving on. Inverted shuttles aren't very big. Well, sure, you know what I mean. In a sense that they have a lot of track or are towering like a giga coaster, they simply just don't have a complete circuit. Whereas every other coaster tends to have a complete circuit. They don't have a lot of track either. Their suspended coasters are best described as having boat-like trains and swing freely like a bat, instead of staying relatively still like on other coasters. Examples of these three types are Raptor and Banshee, which both are inverted coasters. Raptor lives at Cedar Point, whereas Banshee lives at Kings Island. Then we have my best example for an inverted shuttle, which tends to also be one, is Invertigo, which is at Kings Island. Next, we have the Bat of Kings Island and Iron Dragon of Cedar Point for suspended coasters. Now we're actually getting somewhere. Launch Accelerated and Blitz coasters are all high-speed fun, pun intended. Launch and Blitz coasters tend to launch you from a standstill, whereas accelerated launch coasters actually launch you as you're already moving. Examples of each are Flight of Fear and Backlot Stunt Coaster, which actually have twins. They have a twin. Each one does. One lives at King's Dominion, one lives at King's Island. Flight of Fear is a accelerated coaster, and Backlot Stunt is a launched coaster. And then Maverick, who doesn't have a twin, is a Blitz coaster. Next, we kind of have wooden coasters. They literally can range from everything from being a terrain coaster, literally using the terrain. That's the only explanation that I have for that, to dueling coasters, like the Racer. The Racer, the Beast, Mystic Timbers, and Adventure Express are all wooden coasters at Kings Island. Blue Streak and Gemini. Steel Vengeance technically is a hyper hybrid. So it's considered a hypercoaster because its ground height, its ground height is actually over 200 feet. So it's not really anything else. It's a hyper hybrid. First one of its kind, and I don't know if it's the only one. They are all from Cedar Point. All the coasters I mentioned just previously, Blue Streak, Gemini, and Steel Vengeance, are all from Cedar Point. Not too much really needs to be said about the Wild Mouse coasters because there really isn't anything to it. They just spin. Okay, that's not all they do. It just seems that way. Two parks into the battlefield, both presenting a strong army. However, only one has the most variety in their lineup. Whoa, 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 whoa. What in this world do you think you're doing? Who's their generals? Surely each park isn't going to be the one leading the charge. So who literally commands these armies? Well, I'm glad you asked. Time for the big boys. Showing itself first is the tallest and fastest triple launch stratocoaster in the world, Top Thrill 2. This strong coaster is 420 feet tall and hits speeds of 120 miles per hour. Its older brother or father, depends on what you want to call it, had the same similar track layout. However, it lacked a reverse spike tower. Look it up. You'll know what I mean. I'm not sure how to describe it, so look it up yourselves. Its pictures are best. Best if you do some research on your own. Pretty interesting the more you look at it. During the first launch, you'll be going 74 miles per hour and only half of the top hat hill. The main part of the hill kind of looks like a top hat. Before falling back to hit the second launch, which will launch you backwards up the reverse spike tower at 102 miles per hour. The third and final launch, which will be the fastest, is 120 miles per hour, which will be just fast enough to get you over the top hat. Dramatic music plays. Trumpets announce the arrival of the tallest, the fastest, and the longest steel roller coaster at Kings Island. Introducing Orion. This powerful coaster is the newest addition to the Kings Island lineup, but it brings power to the table. Originally known across the Ohio River Valley as Project X, Orion took the city of Mason and Cincinnati by storm. Several other types of coasters and rides went into the making of this coaster, named Orion. Sequence 1 was known as Shooting Star, which did operate at Coney Island in Cincinnati. The following two sequences, sequence 2 and 3, were the Rotor and Bayern Curve. 4 and 5 sequences were two attractions by the names of Zodiac and Skylab. The four following sequences were all roller coasters, which are 6, 7, 8, and 11. They were all roller coasters, only 2 are gone from the park, but the rest are still going strong. Vortex, which was sequence 6, closed back in 2019. Flight of Fear, or sequence 7, is still existent in the new Area 72. Then sequence 8 is in Vertigo, the inverted shuttle coaster that resides in Action Zone close to the Bat, which is the inverted shuttle coaster that resides in Action Zone, which is close to the Bat. Lastly, we have Firehawk, or better known as Sequence 11. Those attractions and roller coasters were all part of the wonderful and fun story behind this epic coaster that towers over all who enters the park. Phew, that was one wild ride. But we still didn't declare who won the battle. Looking back at my notes, this decision is incredibly difficult. However, you can't ignore the facts. Cedar Point does house the following types of roller coasters, A Strata, Giga, Blitz, Floorless, Dive, Wild Mouse, Wing, Out and Back, Terrain, Suspended, Inverted, Shuttle, Inverted, Mine Train, Custom Looping, Hyper Coaster, Hyper Hybrid, and a Dueling Coaster. Kings Island, on the other hand, does house a smaller yet almost more powerful lineup. A Giga, Hypercoaster, Mine Train, Suspended, Inverted Shuttle, Inverted, Accelerated, Out and Back, and a Launch. They also house 2 terrain coasters. Although Kings Island has a strong lineup, Cedar Point does house a more varied lineup. But don't count Kings Island out for the count yet. Yes, Cedar Point holds the first Giga Hyper Coaster and Hyper Hybrid coasters, as well as Strata Coaster. Kings Island holds the world's longest wooden coaster and the world's longest inverted coaster. So Cedar Point wins the most variety competition. Kings Island wins the record holder. But at the end of the day, they're both winners. Any Cedar Point, any Cedar Fair park could be declared a winner. Join us for the next episode as we rise to the challenge once more. Find our upcoming adventures on Spotify and YouTube. I say we're clear for takeoff. That all clear means we're out of here on Rising to the Challenge.